There is someone in your life right now who never loses their temper. They never say the wrong thing at the wrong time. They always look right, dress right, speak right, and somewhere deep inside you, you admire them. But there is another feeling too, isn't there? Something quiet, something uneasy, something that whispers, "This isn't right." Today, we are going to talk about perfect people and why that perfection should terrify you. Not because they are evil, not because they are broken, but because of what their perfection hides. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will never look at a perfect person the same way again. We have been taught since childhood that perfection is the goal. Get perfect grades. Be the perfect child. Build the perfect life. Society rewards those who appear perfect and punishes those who fall apart. So people learn to perform perfection. They learn it early. They learn it well, and the truly dangerous ones, they never stop performing. Let's start with the myth, the comforting lie we all believe. We believe that perfect people have simply worked harder than everyone else. We believe their life is genuinely clean, genuinely sorted, genuinely good. We believe that if something looks perfect, it probably is. That is the lie. And it is a lie that perfect people count on you to believe. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon for decades, and what they found is deeply unsettling. The people who appear the most perfect are often the most controlled, not the most content. Control is not the same as peace. Control is the management of chaos that nobody is allowed to see. There is a clinical term for this. It is called high-functioning perfectionism, and it is far more dangerous than people realize. High-functioning perfectionists don't just want things to be right. They need things to be right, or something inside them begins to fracture. And when things fracture, they don't break outward. They break inward. Inward breakage is silent. You never see it. That is precisely what makes it terrifying. Now let's talk about behavior, because perfect people exhibit very specific behavioral patterns that most people never notice. Pattern number 1. They are always the most helpful person in the room. Not because they love helping, but because helping gives them control of the narrative. When they help you, you owe them. Not money, not favors. You owe them your trust, your loyalty, your good opinion of them. That is not kindness. That is investment. Pattern number 2. They never seem to need anything from you. This feels admirable. It looks like strength, like independence. But needlessness is a wall, and walls keep people out just as much as they keep things in. A person who never needs you can never truly be known by you, and a person who cannot be known is a person you should be very careful around. Pattern number 3. They remember everything. Not in the way a caring friend remembers your birthday, in the way a strategist remembers terrain. They remember what you said 6 months ago when you were drunk and vulnerable. They remember your fears, your insecurities, your weak moments, and they file all of it away. Not maliciously at first, just as data, just as information. But data in the hands of a perfect person is never just data. Pattern number 4. They are almost never angry. But when they are, it is precise and devastating. Most people's anger is messy, emotional, sloppy. It burns and fades. The anger of a perfect person is different. It is surgical. It knows exactly where to cut. They will say one sentence, just one. And that sentence will find the thing you are most afraid of about yourself and say it perfectly, calmly, with a smile. And then they will go back to being perfect, like nothing happened. Let's talk about real cases. Because theory is one thing, but human stories, those are what make this real. Ted Bundy was described by everyone who knew him as charming, handsome, intelligent, and helpful. His neighbors said he was the kind of man you'd want living next door. His colleagues said he was the hardest worker in the room. His girlfriend said he was the most attentive partner she had ever had. All of this was true, and none of it revealed what was underneath. John Wayne Gacy threw neighborhood parties. He dressed as a clown to entertain children. He was a respected businessman. He was photographed shaking hands with the First Lady of the United States. Perfect public image. Perfect community standing. Perfect human being by every appearance. This is not an argument that all perfect people are criminals. Let that be absolutely clear. But it is an argument that the architecture of perfection, the walls, the image, the control, creates a space where darkness can hide indefinitely. Let's go smaller now. Forget the famous cases. Think about your own life. Think about the person at your office who is always professional, always polished, always appropriate. Have you ever tried to get close to them? Really close? Have you ever noticed how they redirect conversations away from themselves? How they ask you questions, genuinely curious questions, but never quite answer yours? This is called strategic deflection, and in perfect people, it is a deeply embedded survival mechanism. They have learned often through significant pain that being truly known is dangerous, so they perfected the art of connection without exposure. They can make you feel deeply seen, deeply understood, deeply valued, without ever actually letting you see them. That is the paradox of the perfect person. They are both present and absent at the same time. Now let us explore the psychology more deeply, because understanding why they became this way changes everything. Most perfect people were not born perfect. They were trained into it, by parents who withheld love conditionally, by environments that punished emotional expression, by experiences that taught them clearly and cruelly that vulnerability leads to loss, so they made a deal with themselves, not consciously, not deliberately, but deeply, psychologically, inevitably. The deal was this: I will never be hurt again. I will never be caught off guard. I will never be vulnerable. I will be perfect instead. And that deal, once made, runs everything. Absolutely everything. It runs how they dress, how they speak, how they respond to criticism. And here is the uncomfortable truth about criticism. Perfect people cannot truly receive it. They can appear to receive it. They can nod. They can say, "That's fair." They can thank you for your honesty, but inside, every piece of real criticism is processed as a threat, as an attack on the architecture of who they have decided to be. And threats are not forgiven. They are cataloged. Now we need to talk about relationships, because this is where the impact of perfect people becomes most intimate and most damaging. When a perfect person loves you or chooses you, it feels extraordinary at first. They are attentive in ways that feel almost supernatural. They remember details. They anticipate needs. They show up. It feels like finally being with someone who truly understands you. But understanding and control look identical in the early stages. As the relationship deepens, you start to notice something. The space around you gets smaller, not through arguments, not through demands, through small, perfect adjustments. Suddenly you find yourself behaving differently, speaking differently, choosing differently. Not because you were forced to, but because perfection, when applied consistently, creates an atmosphere of comparison, and comparison creates shame. In the presence of perfection, your imperfections feel magnified. Your chaos feels shameful. Your emotions feel excessive. Your needs feel childish, and slowly, without a single argument, you begin to shrink. This is not abuse in the traditional sense. There are no bruises, no screaming, no obvious cruelty. But psychologists have a name for what happens inside a relationship built around one perfect person and one imperfect one. They call it identity erosion. The slow, systematic disappearance of who you are, replaced by who they need you to be. And the most devastating part? You often don't notice until it is already done. Let's talk about the evolutionary reason for this. Because perfect people didn't emerge from thin air. They are a product of very old, very deep human forces. Human beings survived not just by being strong, but by being socially accepted. In prehistoric groups, being rejected meant death. Being cast out of the tribe was a death sentence. So the human brain evolved powerfully, efficiently, to monitor social standing, to watch how we are perceived, to adjust behavior accordingly. Perfect people are simply those in whom this evolutionary mechanism was turned up to maximum, and then never turned back down. Their social awareness is not a skill. It is a survival response that never got the signal that the danger was over. Now let's talk about what happens when you challenge a perfect person. Really challenge them, not criticize them, not inconvenience them, but truly challenge the image they have built. What happens then is something psychologists call narcissistic injury, even if the person is not a narcissist in the clinical sense. The injury produces one of three responses, and all three are dangerous in their own way. Response 1, withdrawal. The perfect person becomes suddenly, completely unavailable. Not angrily, not dramatically, just gone. Like a system that powered down. Response 2, redoubling. They work harder. They become more perfect, more controlled, more polished, as if the answer to being challenged is simply to become so impressive that challenge becomes impossible. Response 3. Quiet retaliation. The most dangerous response of all. Quiet retaliation doesn't look like revenge. It looks like distance, like politeness, like them being very, very reasonable. But conversations will be subtly shifted. Your reputation in shared circles will quietly erode. Opportunities will slowly stop coming your way. And they will have never raised their voice, never sent a harsh message, never done anything you could point to and say there. That was it. That was the thing. Now, and this is important, we need to talk about the perfect people who are genuinely trying. Because not all of them are calculating. Not all of them are cold. Not all of them chose this consciously. Many perfect people are exhausted. Desperately, profoundly exhausted. They are holding up an image that they built in pain, that they sustained through effort, and that they do not know how to put down. They are often the loneliest people in any room. Because they have mastered the art of connection while remaining fundamentally disconnected. And here is the saddest part. Many of them don't know how to stop. Because stopping feels like dying. To be imperfect, to be seen as human, to be messy and real, feels, to them, like annihilation. So, what do you do with this information? How do you move through a world that contains perfect people? First, stop being seduced by the performance. Admire competence. Respect discipline. But do not mistake the performance for the person. The person is somewhere behind the performance. And the performance was built to keep you from finding them. Second, watch for asymmetry in the relationship. If you are always the one revealing, always the one being seen, always the one asking for help, something is profoundly unbalanced. Healthy relationships have mutual exposure, mutual risk, mutual messiness. That is what makes them real. Third, do not try to fix them. Do not try to save them. You cannot reach someone who has decided that being reached is the most dangerous thing imaginable. What you can do is stay aware. Stay grounded. Stay clearly yourself. Because the greatest danger of perfect people is not what they do to you. It is what you do to yourself in their presence. You begin to edit yourself. You begin to perform for them. You begin to compete with a standard that was never meant for human beings. And that is the final, quiet, terrible victory of perfectionism. It is contagious. Not through force, not through threat, simply through presence. The person who stands closest to a fire doesn't always know they are burning. So let's return to where we began. That person in your life who never loses their temper. Now you know something you didn't know before. You know that perfection is a structure. And structures always have a purpose. Sometimes that purpose is protection. Sometimes it is control. Sometimes it is both, so intertwined that even they cannot separate them anymore. Perfect people will always exist. They are in your schools, your offices, your families, your closest circles. And they are not monsters. They are human beings who took a wound and built a fortress around it. The fortress is impressive. The fortress is, in many ways, magnificent. But you were never meant to live inside someone else's fortress. And so the final question is not, should you be terrified of perfect people? The answer to that is already yes. The real question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you keep admiring the performance? Will you keep mistaking control for strength? Or will you finally understand that the most dangerous things in this world don't announce themselves? They arrive polished. They arrive composed. They arrive perfect. And that, right there, is exactly why you should be terrified.